Welcome back to another episode of the Hardcore Casual with your boy, Bass the Kid. As always, please like and subscribe, share with a friend, a colleague, a relative, an associate, an enemy, any and all in between. It's all appreciated. I wasn't planning on doing any weekend episodes, but when news drops, I'm not saying I'm the first to react to it because that's not really what I do, but if it's something I want to talk about, I'll try and find time. And as this Saturday, I think I'm going to be taking a break from my regular scheduled gym duties. Now's as good a time as anything before we get to the action later on. So, without further ado, let's get into it. Now, earlier on this week, Devin Haney said he doesn't view Teofimo Lopez as the top guy at 140. He believes that the top guy is Regis Prograis. To an extent, I understand where he's coming from or where he's trying to take that conversation, but I do wholeheartedly disagree. Look, ultimately, whether we believe he deserved it or not, he was still the lineal champion at 140, the former undisputed, never lost any of those belts in the ring prior. So Josh Taylor was the man. You know, regardless of the Jack Catterall situation, Taylor was the man. He was the number one in the division, the consensus number one. He also beat Regis Prograis. Teofimo came up to 140 and he beat the man that was the man. That is undoubted, that's unquestionable. Now, you could say that he was gifted a decision against Jack Catterall that he didn't deserve and subsequently did not look good in his next fight, which is fair. So you could say, well, if Catterall technically took that or at least stripped that man title away from him, whether he had it or not, then you say, okay, well, who's the next best? Well, after losing to Taylor, you could then say, well, Regis Prograis had the better run. He was more active, beat better opponents, and ultimately he's also got a belt as well. So then you say, well, he has shown to be better at the weight since that defeat to Josh Taylor than he was. But then you also have to remember Josh Taylor did then unify and become undisputed against Jose Ramirez, which was a very credible unification. That was 2 belts apiece. So either way how you look at it, Taylor was the guy and Teofimo beat the guy. Now, yes, you might say Regis Prograis is better at the weight currently and probably will have the better longevity there. I think Josh Taylor is going to be moving up, but it's hard for Devin to say anything otherwise. Obviously, he's hyping because he's going to be fighting Regis Prograis next, or at least that's what's being talked about. I think they're moving that date from the 28th of October to the 11th of November. I don't know if 2 weeks is enough to distance between pay-per-view events, but we'll see. I mean, look, ultimately, I guess he could also be thinking, well, Teofimo got beat by George Kambosos at 135, and then I cleaned up his work at 135 twice, and then not only did that, I beat the lauded Vasyl Lomachenko as well. So if you go up to 140 off of a defeat, how exactly are you then saying that the guy that got a gift decision in his last fight, it was the man, and you beat him and you become the man? I can kind of understand that logic as well, but unfortunately it comes down to titles and accolades for the most part. Yes, we can all look at slippage or whatever, but slippage still doesn't equate for the person who doesn't get the job done, unfortunately, and that's exactly what has happened in that situation. So yeah, Teo is undoubtedly number one at 140 at the moment. He's the man. Whether he's the money man of the division, I definitely don't think that's the case, because I think that will end up being Ryan Garcia. The fanfare is just, it is what it is. But yeah, Teo is number one, and you can maybe say Regis is number two. So if Devin beats Regis, he'll be the number 2 guy in the division, but he'll hold a better standing than Teo because he came up undefeated, holding 4 belts, or 5. It was 4 because he doesn't have the IBO. but 5 because he's also had the Ring magazine as well, even though he kind of reneges on that one every now and again. But yeah, so the conversation between the two then becomes a much closer conversation in terms of if they was to unify. But ultimately, Devin, I think, still would end up being the B-side, because the lineal champion of the division very much will be Teofimo Lopez. But yeah, I understand what he's saying, but unfortunately I can't rock with Devin on that one. So Anthony Joshua has recently come out and basically said that he has now put in all of his focus towards the Deontay Wilder fight. He wanted initially to fight in October, but with the fight being expected around sort of that December, January time, as he put it, the timeline just doesn't line up for him, unfortunately, to be able to fight in October as well. That being said, he did say that the Saudis are still interested in trying to do the double main event between Usyk and Fury and Joshua and Wilder. Now, if that is the case, realistically, that won't happen until February, March, because Alexander Usyk is about to fight this week. Yes, he could probably still get another fight in December time, but that's a bit unlikely based on the kind of schedule he's been on recently. So January, February would make more sense. And then Tyson Fury is fighting at the end of October. Now, yes, it's a glorified freak show, but it's still a training camp. It's still going to be some physical exertion. You're still going to probably want a little time to relax. So ultimately, that's looking at that's very much looking sort of a early February, late February, early March type situation. 3 to 4 months rest and recuperation. Now, if that is the case, there would be no issue with Anthony Joshua getting a fight in at the end of October, mid-October, or even like the start of November, because the next fight isn't going to happen until March anyway. If you want to be active, that's still a perfect transition. I don't think it's going to happen before then. I can understand, obviously, putting all of your time and preparation into that Deontay Wilder fight, but the one thing you've got going for you at the moment is, for nothing else, you haven't got to feel out the rounds. Like, you're going to be active, you're going to be sharp. If you end up having another fight this year, then you're going to be as sharp as you'll ever be, which means that you're fighting Deontay Wilder at your absolute max, at your absolute peak. So if you can't beat him at that level, then yeah, there truly is no time for you to still be in the game. Whereas Deontay Wilder will be coming off of 16 months of inactivity. Now, yeah, you might say you want to throw that right hand, but what's the gas tank going to be saying? What's his punch resistance going to be like, knowing he hasn't actually taken a full, stiff, hard-bodied punch for like the last 16 months, and he technically didn't even take one in that fight, so he hasn't taken a proper one in maybe 2.5 years by that point, which means that you don't necessarily know how he's going to react to it, because his body isn't conditioned for taking it again. So if it was happening late December, early January, which to me doesn't really make sense, because if you got Christmas, unless you're doing it at the start of December, everyone's money is going to be focused on Christmas and New Year's Eve. So at that, you're going to really, get the kind of money you're looking for there anyway. January, historically, is a broke month for everyone. I should know, because it's my birthday and everyone always comes with the excuses when it's time to do stuff. So I get it, which therefore that sort of leans to the assumption that you don't even want it at the end of January, because that's the first paycheck back. You want it more February time, like, the end, mid to end February, when that second paycheck comes for a lot of people who are living sort of paycheck to paycheck, possibly even like the second or third week of March, and that would be just before I believe the new Ramadan. So yeah, if that was the case, it would make a lot of sense for Anthony Joshua to try and get another fight in sort of mid-November if he could, because then that just the timeline just works and it keeps him sharp. But I doubt that's going to happen, and fair enough. On the flip side, you had Deontay Wilder saying that that's the next thing for him. So there will be no tune-ups, no keep busy fights. He's going to be getting straight into that, and they're looking for a 2-fight deal, one for Saudi Arabia and the second fight to be in Africa. Now they haven't said where in Africa, but I know Ade is salivating because he has trademarked the chaos in Lagos, and he's begging for it to end up in Nigeria. And I know wholeheartedly he will find himself there, accreditations or no accreditations, he's going. But if that's the case, I mean, is that only if he loses the first fight? Because I'm assuming he'll say, well, if he wins the first fight, Anthony Joshua won't take a rematch. I'm sure that's what he's looking at. So if he's working on the 2-fight deal, I can only imagine that's on the presumption that he may lose in Saudi and then basically cash out in Africa. But I've got a feeling that if anyone loses that fight, especially if they lose it in the, sort of that destructive, dominating highlight reel knockout fashion, that they probably won't run it back, and they will likely give up the game afterwards, unless it's highly competitive and it ends up just being something like maybe an 11th round or a 12th round stoppage, in which case maybe you do run it back so you can make some adjustments, or have one last one against either the big cash out opponent or someone that you can get like a highlight reel victory over, and then call it a day, coming off of a victory rather than a loss. Who knows? But that's the news on that one. And if either of those can happen, I would be very happy. So if Joshua can get another fight in, to me it makes perfect sense, and just more preparation, and more sharpness for that impending challenge against Deontay Wilder, which a lot of people seem to not give him much of a chance in. And on the other side, if you can get the 2-fight deal between the two of them, then that's great, and then that means that Tyson Fury's got nothing else to do but to face Alexander Usyk to clear up undisputed before he eventually gets the Anthony Joshua cash out fight for the both of them. So let's see what happens with that one moving forward. Now, I'm sure you've all heard by now, Robert Helenius has returned an adverse analytical finding for a test that was taken the day before his fight with Anthony Joshua. And it's come back. What day are we on now? We are on the 26th of August, so it came back on the 25th. So roughly 2 weeks after the test was taken. At this point, we don't know what the substance that has been found in the system is. So as always, I don't really have much of a comment on it until I know more and until an investigation comes out, because I can't, go soft on some people and go up to bat for them and be nicey about the situation, and then when it comes to other people, just throw them under the bus or throw their feet to the fire without knowing what's going on. We don't know if it's so far as some type of EPO. We don't know if it's an anabolic steroid, an androgynous steroid. We don't know if it's a stimulant or it's anything of those natures, or we don't know if it's an erroneous ingredient that was maybe in a supplement over the counter, which isn't supposed to be in the supplement, that could have been contaminated and tainted. We're not sure. There's been no statement from him as of yet. There's just a statement from Matchroom expressing that it has obviously come out. It's not necessarily a great look, and I guess with me doing this video about 15 hours after that news broke, maybe 20 hours by the time you see this, it's a bit funny because I've put on Twitter something and I've already seen a few people put it in their videos already. So I'm gonna take solace knowing that they actually watch my tweets and watch what I say. But I just basically said, ultimately, Anthony Joshua must be pissed right now, because his previous opponent, tested for an adverse analytical finding, and then Robert Helenius did as well. They might as well have just kept it quiet and just fought Dillian White, on his own pay-per-view, because I don't know how much money he had to shave off of his paycheck to fight Robert Helenius instead of Dillian White, but I'm going to assume it was at least 60%. So, for example, let's say it was a 10 million guarantee and then you get an upside of the pay-per-view. Well, that probably went down to about 4 million to face Helenius, and Helenius probably got maybe 700,000. So imagine you missed out on 6 million because you didn't want to face a quote-unquote drug cheat, and then you end up facing a quote-unquote drug cheat for less money. I mean, I know personally which one I would rather choose if that was the case. Again, I don't know what's gone on with Helenius. I don't know. A lot of people are speculating it may have been something that he had ingested prior to his tune-up in the castle over in Finland, as opposed to this fight. Like, oh, he's got the call for this fight 3 days and then decides to take something to try and be a bit more active. That's probably not the way it went down, because I think a lot of these things take a little while to, you know, work and get acclimated into your system. So I doubt it would have done anything like 72 hours before, you know, sort of before the bout, or whatever it could have potentially been. So yeah, the theory is it was probably something that was ingested before, and was just still in the system, whether it was traces or large amounts on the Friday. The interesting thing will be they would have both had to do post-fight tests, definitely with UCAD, but probably there would have been post-fight VADA testing as well. So we need to see, was there anything in that test? Now that obviously is not going to absolve him of any guilt from this previous one, but it would be an indication of, you know, what was in the system, and was it, you know, could it have had any, I guess, overall benefit or lasting benefit? Because if it's out of the system by that test, it probably, you know, whatever benefit it had was prior to the AJ fight in the first place, if that is how it will transpire. But I'm just keen to see exactly what's there and how much of it, and just the explanation, you know, and can it be explained. But chances are, I mean, he had permission to box in UK, like the BBBOC. He has a foreign license, so what that probably means is that if anything, he just won't be able to box in the UK again. But he doesn't have a British license, which therefore means that he would still be eligible to box elsewhere: America, Portugal, Spain, Italy, Canada, and the likes above, Mexico. So yeah, ultimately I don't think it's going to really result too much, but again, due process and innocent until proven guilty, and that's my stance. That's how I'm going to stick to it. But please feel free to leave your comments down below. Let me know what you think about this situation and the previous situation. It's unfortunate, but at least I guess the testing is it's going to probably make more people start to think even more carefully about what they're taking, review what they're taking a lot more stringently, or at least just know that, well, if nothing, they're going to suffer some damaged reputation if that's how they want to proceed. But yeah, let me know what you think. Like and subscribe as always, and for right now, it's the Hardcore Casual out.